Good evening, friends. I'm Mr. Narratory, and I'll be your voice tonight as we ease into rest. If these videos help you unwind, take a moment to like and subscribe. It really supports the channel. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it for you right now? Drop it in the comments below. Now, get comfortable. Close your eyes if you'd like, because it's time for tonight's story. I hadn't been back to Elderbrook in 17 years. Not since I was 16. Not since the night I saw my mother kneeling in the cornfield under a blood moon, whispering something into the dirt while her hands bled into the soil. Not since I heard the shears and the scream, but when I got the call that she died alone, collapsed on the porch of our rotten farmhouse, I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag, drove 12 hours straight, just like that. I told myself it was for closure, to sign the papers, sell the house, be done with it. But part of me knew the land wasn't finished with me. The village looked the same. Same leaning fence posts. Same dirt road with no name. Same crooked chapel with its bell long gone. The town of Elderbrook had maybe 60 people know, if that. They didn't wave when I passed. They watched, stared, recognized me, even though they shouldn't have. Even though they shouldn't have remembered my face after all these years. The house hadn't changed either. Peeling paint. Windows fogged from the inside. The porch steps still groaned like they hated to be stepped on. I unlocked the door and stepped in, and the smell hit me. Dust, mold, dried herbs, and something else, something metallic, sweet and sharp. Blood. There were stains on the floorboards by the kitchen door, old ones, faint, but not faint enough. I found her journal in the living room, bound in leather, pages brittle. Most of them filled with looping handwriting I didn't recognize. Not hers. Not at first. It changed over time. Became more erratic. Unstable. One page caught my eye. The land remembers. It knows who feeds it. If it is not fed, it will harvest its own. Another read. Saw him again. In the corn. The mask is cracked this year. I think he remembers me too. I slept in the truck that night. Didn't dare stay inside. The moon was full. And when I closed my eyes, I swore I heard footsteps in the field. Heavy, slow, and the distinct metallic clink of old shears opening and closing. The next morning, I visited the chapel to arrange her funeral. No one would help. The preacher, old man with milky eyes, just shook his head. You should bury her yourself, he said. No service? His eyes flicked to the window, out toward the fields. She broke the cycle. She stopped feeding it. What the hell does that mean? He didn't answer. He just handed me a shovel. I buried her behind the house. Next to my father, the grave was shallow, the earth dry, but pliant, as if it had been fed recently. When I was done, I wiped my hands and stepped back. And I saw something carved into the tree above the grave. At first, I thought it was just bark, split by age. But no, it was letters. A name. Mine. That night, the wind howled through the corn, and I saw lanterns moving between the rows. Not carried, floating, glowing orange-red like coals in a dying fire. And between them, something tall, shifting, dragging something behind it. The sound of metal on dirt. I locked every door, every window. Saturday, by the front door, with a kitchen knife and a bottle of whiskey. I didn't sleep, but I must have drifted, because just before sunrise, I opened my eyes, and someone had slid a bundle of corn through the dog door, each ear sliced in half, dripping red. Not blood, not exactly, but I knew the smell. It was flesh. I burned the corn in the fireplace. Saturday on the floor, shaking, while the smoke filled the house. And when the last of it was ash, I opened the front door and found a note nailed to it, scratched in shaky all-caps pencil on rotted wood. You inherited more than the land. The barn out back had always been locked. I used to ask my mother what was inside. She'd just shake her head. The harvest man lives in there, she once said. Ain't proper to visit until your name's been called. Now I had the keys. Now the journal was mine. Now the land was whispering again, and I knew it had called my name. I didn't open the barn right away. I stood outside it for an hour that morning, just staring. The door was taller than I remembered. The wood blackened, warped from sun and time, iron bolts across it, as if someone once tried to keep something in, or maybe keep something out. The key from my mother's will was old, rusted, but it fit the lock. I didn't turn it, not yet. I spent the rest of the day walking through the village, trying to act normal, trying to see if this was still a place with real people and not just shadows pretending to be. But everyone looked strange now. I'd forgotten how sunken their eyes were, how pale, how quiet. They didn't greet me, didn't look at me directly, just watched me from behind windows, from porch swings, from the shade of the old trees that lined the dirt roads. Only one person spoke to me, an old woman in a rocking chair outside the general store. She called me by name. "You favor your mother," she said. She tried to starve it. We all suffered. I asked what she meant. She looked past me, toward the fields. The land remembers who feeds it, and it knows who denies the plate. Then she smiled. "You'll have to choose soon, boy. If you don't, it'll choose for you." I went back to the house, tried to open the notebook again, the one I found beside my mother's body. But now, the pages had changed. They were blank, except for one word scrawled across the center of the first page, "Offering." Just after sunset, I finally unlocked the barn. The hinges shrieked when the doors creaked open. Dust exploded into the air like it had been holding its breath for decades. It wasn't empty. It was a shrine. Chains hung from the beams above. Hooks, old tools, rusted to colorless brown. And at the center a slab of stone blackened by fire. Dried blood caked into every crack. Surrounding it were 7 objects, small, personal. One was a child's shoe, another a wedding ring, a lock of hair tied with twine, a pair of broken glasses, a belt buckle, a folded photograph, and a wooden coin with a symbol carved into it, the same symbol I saw burned into the tree above my mother's grave, the same one I found in her journal. I didn't touch any of them, but I counted 7 objects, 7 sacrifices. I turned to leave, and I saw a name scratched into the inside of the barn door, fresh, still curled with wood dust. Bree Sutter. I knew that name. We'd gone to school together. She was a year younger, quiet, friendly. Moved away after high school, said she couldn't take the way the land smelled in fall. I hadn't seen her since, until now. She was standing in the cornfield across from the house, barefoot, staring straight at me. I called her name. She didn't answer, didn't move, just kept staring, then slowly raised her arm and pointed behind me. I turned. Nothing was there. When I looked back, she was gone. That night, the corn began to whisper. I sat by the window, the journal in my lap, flipping through blank pages, until suddenly, ink began to rise on the page by itself, like something under the surface was pushing up the words. One name, one blade. The soil knows what it's owed. I dreamed of the harvest man. At least, I think it was a dream. I was standing in the barn, except it was taller inside now, wider. The chains above me were moving, swinging. Something was hanging from them. Dozens of bodies, swaying slowly, and from behind them stepped a figure, tall, wrapped in burlap, face covered with a leather sack, stitched eyes, a grin carved into the fabric. He held something in his hands. Shears, old and rusted, dull from use, but they dripped. He walked slowly toward me, dragging one leg behind him, and when he reached me, he didn't speak. He just placed something in my hand, a wooden token with Bree's name carved into it, and whispered, "One must feed, or all will rot." I woke up covered in dirt. I'd been sleepwalking, standing outside the barn again, barefoot, a token clenched in my fist. Bree Sutter. The next morning, the sheriff came knocking. He looked tired, older than I remembered, eyes like stone. Said Bree was missing, hadn't shown up for work. Car still in her driveway, no signs of struggle. He didn't accuse me. He didn't need to. We both knew the land had taken her, or worse, that it was waiting for me to deliver her. Inside the barn, a new object had been added to the altar. A necklace I remembered from high school, Bree's. Next to it, carved into the stone slab, she denied the harvest, so the harvest took her. The barn reeks now, not of age, not of rot, of fresh blood. The altar stone is wet again. I didn't do it. I didn't even go in last night, but somehow The cracks are filled with a deep rust color, and flies have begun to gather near the chain hooks. And Bree's necklace is still there, warm to the touch, like it was just worn. I called the sheriff. I told him what I found. He stood in the doorway with his hat clutched in one hand, eyes scanning the room, but he didn't step inside. He never crossed the threshold. I asked him what the hell was happening, why no one's looking for her, why this place is getting worse every hour. He said, "The land chooses who it remembers. That girl tried to leave, but she came back, just like you." What does that mean? He met my eyes, really met them, for the first time, and said something I still can't forget. "You think the harvest man's just a tale? No, son. He's the mask the land wears to do its work. We don't choose the names. We just record them." Then he dropped something at my feet. A ledger. Old, bound in flaking leather. Smelled of damp earth and dust. The book of names. He turned and walked away without another word. Inside the ledger were list names, dates, objects, every year. Always 7 names, going back over 100 years. Sometimes with ages, sometimes only initials. Sometimes with notes, "Gave herself, taken during planting, refused harvest man collected, child, unavoidable." Then I reached the year I left, the year I turned 16, the year my mother told me to run and never come back, and there it was, 2006 pounds in Carver, taken during blood moon, last-minute substitution. There was a circle around it, and scrawled beside it in red, her son's name was supposed to be there. I dropped the book. Everything inside me twisted. She gave Aaron in my place. He was my best friend. I thought he ran away. I thought maybe his parents took him back east. But no, he fed the field that year because my mother wouldn't let me. That night I drank myself into a fog, and still the dreams came. This time I saw Aaron, or what was left of him. His body was buried up to the neck in the field, eyes open, lips sewn, and above him the harvest man towered, shears dangling at his side. He didn't use them. He just stood there, and Aaron screamed without a sound, then turned to me, eyes pleading. I tried to move, to pull him out, but the corn wrapped around my wrists, held me, and the soil whispered, "It is your turn to give." I woke up with a bloody nose. The journal was open in my lap, words written across it that hadn't been there before. The second has been planted. There was another object on the altar now, a man's wallet. I didn't recognize it until I opened it and saw the ID, Sheriff Danner. I ran back to the village. His cruiser was still parked in front of the station, but no one was inside. No lights on, no sound, just a long, rusty trail of footprints leading out the back door into the woods. They stopped at the edge of the field, where a pile of his clothes sat, folded neatly. Beside them, a pair of boots, still steaming. I didn't know what to do. I staggered home, hands shaking. The book of names clutched to my chest like a life preserver. That night, I flipped to the current year. 3 names were now inked in. 1. Bree Sutter, returned. 2. Sheriff Danner, record keeper, expired. Sad, my name wasn't there yet, but there were 4 more empty lines. And now I understood. This wasn't random. It was a ritual, a schedule, and the land always demanded 7. I thought about burning the barn down, pouring gas over every chain, every token, every rotted inch. But something in my bones stopped me. The fear wasn't of being caught. It was of what the land might do if it were interrupted, what it might take next. So I did the one thing I could. I wrote a letter to someone I hadn't seen in 15 years. Lori Ann Whitaker. She used to live 3 houses down. We kissed once behind the grain mill. She moved away in 2008, but I remember she used to talk to the corn, said it whispered back. I mailed the letter the next morning from the last working box in Elderbrook. I don't know if it'll reach her, but I need someone to know what's happening before it's my turn, before I become the 4th name. That night, the corn sang, and I swear I heard my mother's voice humming along. I stopped pretending I was going to leave. That fantasy died when I found the sheriff's boots still warm in the field. When I watched the 3rd name ink itself into the ledger without a hand to write it. When the corn started whispering my mother's lullabies through the open windows at night. I kept telling myself I could stop it. That was the lie. What I really wanted was a way out that didn't involve me bleeding. The barn changed again. More chains. This time, lower. The altar stone had been cleaned. Not by me. The blood was gone. But the stone shone like it had been oiled. And in the exact center of the slab, someone or something had carved a new symbol. A circle of shears. Inside it, a single drop, painted in fresh blood. The book of names now had the 3rd entry fully filled. 3. Hannah Mullen, unfit mother, missing since planting. I knew Hannah, vaguely. She used to drink too much. Lost custody of her daughter years ago. Lived near the chapel. The kind of woman people judged without helping. Her front door was wide open when I passed it that morning. The floor was covered in feathers, and in the center of her living room, nailed into the wood, was a lock of her hair, held down by a rusted gardening shear. No one asked about her. No one mentioned her name. The town just kept moving. Children played. Men smoked on porches. The chapel bell still didn't ring, and all of them kept glancing at me when they thought I wasn't looking. Like I was already dead. Like I was just waiting to rot. That night, I walked the fields. The moon was half full, high above the corn. Everything was so quiet. I could hear the stalks creaking in the wind. And then, like the last breath of a sleeping body, I heard the snap, a shearing sound, steel through bone. I turned and ran. Didn't stop until I was back inside the house, covered in sweat and dirt, The next day, the barn had something new. A voice. Not loud, not spoken, but present, like a low hum you feel in your teeth. It made the walls sweat, the stone breathe, the chains swing gently, even without wind, and in the middle of the altar, something waited. A new token, a ring. I picked it up, recognized the initials inside. J.T., Jacob Tiller, the one person in this town who ever made me afraid as a kid. He used to trap stray dogs in the ravine and laugh while they screamed. Once threw a dead squirrel at my window and scratched Sinner into the glass. He was 16. I was 10. I never forgot. And apparently, neither did the land. I went to his house, knocked. He answered shirtless, unbothered, stinking of beer and arrogance. Figured you'd come, he said. Heard the land picked me. I stared at him. You're not going to run? He laughed. I've been feeding this dirt since before your mama let you crawl. I held up the ring. Then why did it give me this? His smile faltered. For just a second. But it was enough. He lunged, tried to grab me by the throat. I pulled the only weapon I had, a garden hook I'd kept on my belt. We struggled. He slammed me into the porch post. I felt something crack in my ribs. I swung wildly, hit him in the thigh. He screamed. We fell down the steps together, rolled into the dry earth, and I drove the hook into his shoulder. He hissed, coughed blood, but he didn't beg. He looked me in the eye and spat. You're gonna feed it too. You think you're not rotting already? Look in the goddamn mirror. I left him bleeding on the porch. I didn't kill him. I didn't have to. The land had already made its decision. And by the time I got home, the fourth name had inked itself in the ledger. 4. Jacob Tiller, blade forged debt, paid in blood. The shears hung from the rafters in the barn that night, cleaned, polished, waiting, and the altar whispered, 3 more, then the ground sleeps. I should have felt safe, but all I felt was cold, because now I understood something my mother never said out loud. She didn't fear the harvest man. She feared what would happen if he was ever satisfied. The ledger pages felt heavier now, each turn a weight, each name a scream I could hear in the back of my head. I was halfway to 7, and the land was getting faster, hungrier, stronger. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, breath shallow. The house creaked, like something was walking in the attic, and just before dawn, I heard a sound that froze my veins. A second set of shears, opening, closing, somewhere inside the walls. The flyers showed up overnight, tacked to every door, slipped under windows, pinned to my front gate with a corn husk ribbon. Elderbrook's annual harvest festival. Come celebrate the season of plenty. Food, music, bonfire, blessings of the land, one night only. Don't be late. There was no date, but everyone in town seemed to know when. They were already carving pumpkins by morning. I watched them from my porch, people smiling, children painting their faces, men hammering stage planks in front of the chapel, women stitching costumes from burlap and wheat for a town drowning in blood and silence. They looked excited, even joyful, like the festival was the one good thing they had left, or like they knew it would be someone else's turn this year. I opened the book of names again, flipped to this year's page. Still 4 filled, still 3 empty, but the corner of the page had a dark stain on it now, like blood had soaked through from somewhere deeper. It smelled sweet, familiar. I went to the general store to ask around. Most ignored me. Some smiled too wide. One woman gripped my hand hard enough to hurt and whispered, "It always chooses someone who dances, so don't dance." I almost didn't go. Almost. But when the sun dipped low and the drums began to echo across the hills, something pulled me from the house. Not guilt, not curiosity, obligation. They held the festival in the center of town, right in front of the chapel. Decorations were everywhere. Corn dolls, scarecrows, bundles of dried herbs hung in spirals from the trees. A fire roared in the pit, smoke trailing into the black sky. Tables of food lined the square. Roasted meats, cider, cornbread, so sweet it hurt your teeth. And masks. Everyone wore one. Even the children. Simple, homemade, sackcloth with stitched eyes and grins. The kind that looked like they were never meant to come off. Someone handed me a mask as I entered. I almost refused, but their grip tightened around my wrist, and they said, "It sees best through strangers." So I wore it and pretended to belong. Then the music started. Old scratchy fiddle, out of tune, the kind that makes you sway without meaning to. People formed a circle around the fire. They clapped, they sang, and they danced. That was when I saw her, Lori Ann Whitaker, standing across the circle, wearing the same sunflower dress she'd worn when we were 12. No mask, just her face, and she was smiling at me. I pushed through the crowd, shouted her name, but the drums got louder. The people spun faster, and when I reached where she had been, she was gone, replaced by a mask lying in the dirt, stitched lips torn open, still warm. I turned to run, but hands stopped me. 4, 5, 6, set shouldering my arms, my shoulders. The music stopped, the fire dimmed, and someone dragged something out of the chapel. A cart, covered in black cloth. They pulled it to the center of the square, unveiled it. The altar stone, brought from the barn, washed, polished, waiting, and beside it, a pair of gleaming shears, clean as bone. Then a name was read aloud. No microphone, no stage, just a single voice that echoed in my teeth. Rebecca Kiln. The name hit like a gunshot. The villagers froze. Whispers started. One woman screamed. A man dropped his mask, and from the back of the crowd, a girl stepped forward, barefoot, crying. No one stopped her, not even her parents. She walked to the altar, lay down, and didn't scream when the mask was placed over her face. The shears dropped, once, twice, 3 times, each snip louder than the last, each followed by a breath from the land, a shiver beneath our feet. And when it was done, the crowd clapped, slow, solemn, and began to dance again. I tried to run, made it to the edge of the crowd, but someone grabbed my shoulder. I turned, ready to swing, and saw Lori, not a memory, not a ghost, real, alive. "Come with me," she whispered, and I followed her into the dark. We didn't speak until we reached the barn. The stone was gone. Only dust remained. But the air was wrong, pressurized, like something had been unsealed. Lori turned to me, eyes shining. "I got your letter," she said. "I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't." She looked at the altar. "They're speeding it up. This year, something's different." She pulled something from her coat. The book of names. Not the one I had. A second one. Older. Thicker. She flipped it open and showed me a page from 1954. My mother's name, circled in red. Beside it, willing vessel, host of the cycle, preserved for future soil. "She wasn't just protecting you," Lori said. "She was feeding it from the inside." I didn't understand, but I felt something crack in me, a seed of dread sprouting roots, because the next page was blank, except for one thing, a single name, written in dark ink, fresh, not typed, not printed, handwritten. 5 Rebecca Kiln, dance completed. Then, as I watched, a 6th name began to bleed into the page, slow, letter by letter, until I read it, until it read mine. My name was bleeding through the page, written in long black strokes that pulsed like veins. The 6th offering. No explanation, no date, just 2 words beneath it. Next to cut. I dropped the book. Lori grabbed it before it hit the dirt, slammed it shut like it could bite her. "We have to go," she said. "To where?" She looked up at the rafters of the barn. The chains weren't swinging anymore. They were reaching down. We took the back trail behind the barn. No flashlight, no talking. The woods around Elderbrook felt too still. The crickets had stopped. The wind stopped. Even the corn had gone silent, like it was holding its breath for the final cut. Lori led me past the ravine, into the hills, and toward a place I'd long buried in my memory. The old silo, collapsed decades ago, or so I thought. But the cement walls still stood, a ring of concrete teeth in the earth. We climbed down through a side breach, and beneath the surface there was a door, wooden, heavy, older than the silo itself, covered in carvings, not art, instructions. She pulled a second key from her necklace, unlocked it. We stepped inside, and I realized this was where the story really began. The room was lined with shelves, not books, jars, hundreds, each filled with dried soil and scraps of flesh, fingers, teeth, hair, all labeled with initials and years. The oldest one I saw, 1879. Every family fed the land, Lori said. 7 a year, volunteered or taken. That was the pact. Why? To survive. The soil here was dead. Nothing grew. So the elders gave blood. The land answered. I looked at her. And the harvest man? She took a deep breath. He's not real. I stared at her, stunned. Then she finished. He's worse. She knelt beside a stone tablet near the wall. It looked like an altar, but smaller, worn smooth by time. This was the first, she whispered. The bloodstone, where it began. There were names etched into the slab. The first 7, and among them, Whitaker, Tiller, Mullen, Kiln, all names of the villagers who had already died this cycle. And then, next to those, my family name. You were supposed to be the 7th this year, Lori said. Your mother changed the order. She delayed it, hid you in plain sight. But why now? Why is it accelerating? Because she died before she could feed it. I felt sick. The truth settled in like ash in my lungs. My mother hadn't just lived in Elderbrook. She'd held it together. She was the vessel. The one who gave her own blood when others ran. And now that she was gone, the land was starving. That night, we slept in the silo chamber, took turns keeping watch. When I closed my eyes, I dreamed of my mother for the first time since the funeral. She stood at the edge of a burning cornfield, holding a bow. Her arms were cut open from wrist to elbow. She was smiling. Behind her, the harvest man waited. Mask cracked, shears raised, and she turned to me and said, "He can't harvest what's already been planted." Then she poured the bowl over her head, and flames swallowed her whole. I woke screaming. Lori had the book open again. 2 names left. 6 was still mine. 7 was still blank. But something had changed. There was a note now beneath my name. Debt may be transferred by blood. She stared at it. I don't know what it means, but I did. It meant I didn't have to die. It meant I could give someone else in my place. Family, blood, lineage. The land didn't care who, only that. Where's my father buried? I asked. Lori didn't answer, just looked away. I pressed harder. Tell me. She sighed. He's not. We hiked back to the house at dawn. The town was quiet. No birds, no voices. Smoke curled lazily from the chapel chimney, but it wasn't wood they were burning. The smell told me that much. Lori led me past the garden, through the back pasture, to the edge of the marsh. There, Hidden beneath vines and stone was a locked hatch. She opened it, and beneath, a staircase, carved into stone, wet, cold, and down there, in the dark, my father, still alive, chained to the wall, skin pale and sagging, eyes clouded, lips stitched. Not mute contained, Lori whispered. He tried to break the pact in '89, killed the fifth before the field could take her. The land didn't like that. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even step forward. He looked up at me, and in that moment, I saw what I'd become if I stayed here. A vessel, a sacrifice in waiting, a man with his name carved into the dirt, and a mask ready to wear. I can give him, I whispered. Lori nodded. It'll take him, if you're sure. I hesitated, looked into his hollowed-out eyes, and whispered, let him be the sixth. The earth shuddered, the light dimmed, and on the stone tablet in the silo, his name etched itself into the cycle. 6 names, 1 to go. And now I knew the land would not rest this time. It wanted all of us. The ground didn't shake when my father died. It sighed, like the land had taken a bite big enough to chew again. The bloodstone in the silo pulsed. The altar stone reappeared in the barn, wiped clean but cracked down the center like the offering had been accepted, but not welcomed. The air was heavier now, warmer, too warm. The crops were growing at an impossible rate. The corn, once waist high, now towered over the house. The fields moved even when there was no wind, and in the book of names only one line remained. Gee, I thought the nightmare would end. That, maybe giving my father would complete the cycle, but that was never what the land wanted. Not this year. This year was the last harvest. This year, the dead ends. And it wants more than blood. The town was silent when I walked through it. No festival, no children, no fires, just burlap masks on every porch. Eyes stitched, grins painted, waiting to be worn, or maybe waiting to remember who wore them. Lori met me at the chapel. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She held out the book of names, one final time. But this time, there were 2 names etched into the 7th line. Mine and hers, side by side. The land had chosen, and now we had to choose. There was no ceremony, no crowd, only the 2 of us, the altar stone, and a pair of shears placed gently on top gleaming silver, no rust, clean as glass. I looked at her, tried to speak. She shook her head. You saved me once, she said. You remember? I did. We were kids. She almost drowned in the creek behind the mill. I pulled her out. Didn't even think. You saved me, she said again. Let me do the same. Number? You don't have to. Neither do you. We stared at the blade between us. The corn swayed without wind. The land waited. Then she whispered, if we both go, maybe the cycle ends. It hit me like lightning. The ledger never said one must die, only that the harvest must be full. What if the seventh sacrifice was choice? What if we went together? So we stood side by side and placed our hands on the altar. No struggle, no scream, just the cut. Through palm, through memory, the shears bit deep, and the ground drank. We walked into the field, together. No masks, no fear. The corn parted, the air shimmered, and in the clearing, where the blood moon painted the soil red, he waited, the harvest man. But he didn't lift the blade. He didn't move. He watched, then nodded, and faded like mist under morning sun. We buried the book of names beneath the bloodstone. We sealed the barn. We burned the masks. And when the corn withered the next week, we let it rot. It's been 6 months. The town is quiet now, peaceful. No signs, no whispers. The land sleeps, but I still wake up some nights to the sound of shears, opening, closing, soft, measured, patient. And sometimes I wonder if we ended the cycle or just became the next version of it, because Lori doesn't speak anymore. She just stares into the fields, like she's waiting for something to grow.